observing IIHM Euro Wine Tour students about to arrive. So last year we had a really great experience in the Rhone Valley in France. Off with a visit to the Champagne region and visited some of the most famous champagne houses that we have in Champagne. Gave us quite a diversity of wines, from the famous Condrieu white wine, which is in the northern part of Rhone. In the northern part of Rhone as well, we also visited Côte-Rôtie, a famous wine growing region where they focus on Syrah. And we were also in the southern part of Rhone, which is actually quite different from the north. We try to give a diversity in the different regions so they can see the different styles of wine and how the different weathers and different terroir. And in southern Rhone is home to probably the most famous wine region there, which is Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Not only were we able to visit a wonderful family-owned
Incredible India. Every year 11 million foreign tourists are coming to India, which is growing at a rate of 3.5%. In fact, the tourism industry contributes to about 9% of India's GDP. This unfortunately has come to a temporary halt due to the pandemic. But there is hope. Hospitality evangelist, Dr. Suborno Bose, also founder of IIHM, the International Institute of Hotel Management, is grateful to the United Nations World Tourism Organization for promoting the theme Tourism for Inclusive Growth during World Tourism Day on 27th of September 2021. IIHM pledges to remain strongly committed to reviving the tourism industry post-COVID. This time, we ought to give the floor to all marginalized groups and the most vulnerable who have been hit hardest of all. Discover our own country first. Local tours of forts, palaces, heritage sites help generate income for the local tour guides. Experience local homestays or traditional hotels where you can deeply explore its local food, culture, and language. It is a surreal experience to share food with them and listen to their endless stories by the bonfire. Indian food is like Indian culture, extremely diverse. So bring out the Desi in you and visit local restaurants and try out the local delicacies. Also visit local markets, souvenirs, jewelry, clothes, handicrafts, take your pick, for the variety is endless. Well, this provides income and encouragement to the local art and artisans. Yellow taxis or handpull rickshaws synonymous to the city of joy. The houseboat in the picturesque backwaters of Kerala, India has much to offer to the domestic traveler while promoting local tourism. Atithi Devo Bhava, meaning guest is God. This phrase and its meaning had become an important practice since the times of ancient India, and even today it serves as the country's philosophy to promote tourism.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all the ladies and gentlemen present here today who have logged in from different parts of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we are celebrating the World Tourism Day 2021. Well, tourism is the second largest employer anywhere in the world, and it has the answer to the unemployment across. Ladies and gentlemen, today, inauguration of IIHM Global Center of Hospitality and Tourism Research will be done by Honorable Secretary General of UNWTO, Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili, and followed by the panel discussion on the theme Tourism for Inclusive Growth. Taking this forward, ladies and gentlemen, it's my absolute pleasure and honor to invite Dr. Suborno, Bose, CEO and Chairman, IIHM Hotel School, Hospitality Evangelist, Founder and Chief Mentor of the Indismart Group, and IIHM, and CEO, International Hospitality Council, UK. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us, sir. Over to you to take this forward. Dr. Bose.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever in the world you have logged in. It's such a pleasure, such an honor for all of us at the IIHM Global community as we celebrate the very historic World Tourism Day today, World Tourism Day 2021. Very, very historic, as the tourism industry was up very, very badly hit by the pandemic. But as we are going ahead and we are coming out and of the trouble, we are coming out of those dark days, and as I say, we are rising from the ashes. So this Tourism Day, I think, is very special and very historic. So World Tourism Day 2021 is also very historic for all of us at IIHM, because today the IIHM Global Center for Tourism and Hospitality Research would be officially inaugurated by none other than the Secretary General of United Nations World Tourism Organization, His Excellency Zurab Pololikashvili. And it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you in this absolutely historic occasion. The IIHM Global Center for Tourism and Hospitality Research has got a vision to do research in the field of tourism and hospitality globally, with an international faculty of the research scholar, research guide, and the stalwarts of the industry, led from the front by none other than Professor David Foskett and colleagues from all over the world. And we are looking forward to make this Global Research Center a cutting-edge, one-shop research center for the tourism and hospitality industry internationally. Well, the World Tourism Day 2021 is there for celebration, because after the very, very difficult 18 months due to the pandemic, due to the other reasons as well, the world is coming back as far as tourism is concerned. It's coming back slowly, but as we are seeing that it is definitely coming back, limping back to some kind of normalcy. And in India, I'm sure that domestic tourism is doing absolutely incredibly great. And I think we can see a lot of tourism happening. The travels are happening now. Flights are going full. The leisure and the resorts are going full. Even the business travel has started. The MICE business have started. The weddings have started. And come November and December, and you can see thousands of the weddings coming back to the hotels and resorts. So the business is going to be back again. And that is very important for the travel trade, for the tourism, and for the hospitality industry. So keeping that in mind, the World Tourism Day 2021 is extremely important, and I think in a lot of ways very historic, because the world has never seen a pandemic like this ever before, and possibly the world would never see one more like this ever after. But as we come out of the ashes and come out, we can only say build back and better. We can only see the better days, and we have to build the entire tourism under new expectations of our guests. The guests are expecting now responsible tourism. The guests are expecting sustainable tourism and much more health conscious tourism. Post-COVID tourism will be very different because health will be very important. Vaccination will be very important. And people who are only vaccinated fully would be allowed to work in the industry. The guest expectation would be hygiene first. And we all need to address each of these. It is not just what it was before March 2020, because the world have changed to the new normal, to the next normal. And if we expect the old normal to come back, that's not going to happen. So we need to prepare ourselves. We need to prepare our students. We need to prepare our people working in the industry to embrace the new reality, the new expectation of the guest. And the Global Center for Tourism and Hospital Research would work towards this very, very closely with the global leaders in the tourism and hospitality industry. So we are absolutely delighted to have with us once again His Excellency, the Secretary General of United Nations World Tourism Organization, Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili, and we are going to witness the official inauguration by him. And let's see what he says. He's already here. So wishing everyone out here, everybody, a great World Tourism Day, a great year ahead for all of us in the travel, tourism, hospitality sector. And with that, I hand it over to Abdullah for the rest of the program. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks for joining in. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Bose. Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward, I'll introduce you to my co-moderator of the day, Paul Walsh. The handsome Mr. Walsh will be moderating with me. Over to you, Mr. Walsh, to take the proceedings forward.
Thanks ever so much, Abdullah, and thank you, Dr. Bose, for that sterling introduction. It's always great to hear from you and some wise words that we always look forward to. Well, I've got the great job, I've got the best job perhaps, and that's to introduce our next guest, the Secretary General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili. And let's, without any further ado, let's hear from His Excellency.
Dear friends, it's my great pleasure to greet you on World Tourism Day. I bring with me the best wishes of all UNWTO members, a community of 159 nations. We celebrate as the world cautiously reopens to travel. Now is the time to recognize our sector's essential role as a vehicle of sustainable and equal development. The theme of World Tourism Day 2021 is Tourism for Inclusive Growth. Today, we highlight the value of everyone involved in tourism, both visitors and the visited. India has always seen tourism as a vital part of social, economic, cultural and environmental advancement. You have also long been a valued ally of UNWTO. In 2019, Incredible India was host country for World Tourism Day. And your government has supported tourism through the biggest crisis in the history of the sector. At the same time, the International Institute of Hotel Management has emerged as a true leader in the tourism excellence. It connects India's talented youth to the wider sector and the world. Furthermore, the IIHM Global Center of Tourism and Hospitality Research is a forum that will enhance this unique relationship between hospitality, education, and employers. Today, on World Tourism Day, UNWTO is proud to stand with the IIHM, and I'm honored to officially inaugurate the IIHM Global Center for Tourism and Hospitality Research on this historic occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. That was, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili on the inauguration of IIHM Global Center of Hospitality and Tourism Research. Moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, it's my absolute honor to invite Professor David Foskett, MBE. He's a member of the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts, Chairman, International Hospitality Council, London, and an author of many hospitality books published worldwide. We are honored to have him today with us. Over to you, sir, for your words.
Sorry, yeah. Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Dr. Bose, for that inspiring introduction. It's always a tremendous pleasure to speak on behalf of IIHM and the hospitality industry. In London, with the sun is just about to shine, we've had a terrible start to the day. It's been very stormy. Reminds me of the last 18 months. We've had a great storm in the disruption of tourism worldwide. And tourism is, we know it's a very important subject economically to countries throughout the world, but it's a very important subject in terms of well-being. People have an insatiable appetite to travel. They want to travel, they want to explore, they want to venture. It's part of the human condition. And if they can't do that, many people suffer from mental health. And we know that the lockdown has increased the problems with mental health significantly. And hopefully, the dawn is breaking. We're coming out of not so much the pandemic, but the restrictions, because the pandemic is still very much here. Yesterday, there were 30,000 new infections in the UK. But we are being jabbed. We've all got the vaccine. And that's going to be the new norm for travel, the vaccine. So people are starting to travel again. And tourism is very important for another reason. It helps us as humanity to understand other cultures, to get a greater understanding of people throughout the world. And that's a very important factor in that how we can understand different cultures, different religions throughout the world through tourism. And why do we need research? We need research because post-pandemic, the world is not going to be the same as it was. We have to understand what the new technologies will be, customer service, employment patterns, and what are the new expectations of the customers, our guests, post-pandemic. These are issues we have to address and we have to research, because tourism is here to stay, albeit in a very different form. And tourism has so much to offer, as I said before, us as humans and humanity. How exciting tourism is. And I know from my visits to India, which is an excellent example of tourism, it has so much to offer. Food, culture, music, scenery, resorts, wonderful experience, which enlightens the visitor, gives great pleasure to the visitor. Or we call them the tourist. I prefer to call them the visitor. Or even better, the guest experience of tourism. And I welcome this Centre for Global Research because it's going to achieve so much in the future and give us a greater understanding of what is needed as we move out of this pandemic, these difficult times that we've had, and help us to understand if we are faced with similar problems in the future, how we can overcome them quickly, how we can prevent any more lockdowns in the years to come. Because viruses are very much here to stay as well. We have to learn to live with them. We have to learn to live with them. And hygiene, as Dr. Bose said, is going to be absolutely essential with regard to tourism in the future, what the guests expect, how to prevent contamination. And as a hospitality lecturer, I know that hygiene and understanding hygiene was always at the top of my list. Safety. It is the safety of the tourist, of the guest, of the visitor, which is paramount. So they can, if they're safe, they can enjoy the wonderful, wonderful experiences that tourism has to offer, and how it helps us mentally and physically in the world that we live. I welcome this World Tourism Day, and I thank IIHM again for showing such a leadership, such initiative to make things happen. And one thing that IIHM can do so well is they make things happen. So let's make World Tourism Day, let's say with IIHM, partnership with IIHM, let's make things happen. Let's move forward to the future as the dawn is breaking and the light is shining. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Foskett. Always inspiring words. We look forward to hearing from you every time I see you on a connection. And hopefully in not too long, we'll be able to meet again in person as travel opens up.
Indeed.
It's now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Mr. Ndrai Eric Camille is the Ambassador of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire. And Côte d'Ivoire this year are a focus state, a focus country of the United Nations World Tourism Organization. So it really would be a pleasure to be able to introduce him. Unfortunately today, he's had to travel on very urgent business. So we're not going to hear from His Excellency at this time, but he has sent his best wishes to everyone as a focus of the World UNWTO. It would have been a delight to hear from him, but it's not to be, the beautiful country of Côte d'Ivoire. So we'll skip on from that and hand you over to Abdullah.
Thank you, Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward, it's my absolute pleasure to invite Honorable Vice-Chancellor of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University, West Bengal, Professor Saikat Maitra. He's a chartered chemical engineer and a fellow of Institute of Engineers who has filed for 2 patents and authored 3 books and 3 book chapters. He's the Honorable Vice-Chancellor of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology. It's an absolute pleasure for us to have you, Mr. Maitra, with us, and over to you to share your words on this discussion on World Tourism Day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdullah, and all my co-panelists. I can see Mr. David Foskett, Mr. Paul Walsh, Mr. Shamir Mehta, Mr. Rajiv Singh, Mr. Suman Gharai, and all other dignitaries who are present over here. It's a great day for all of us for observing this World Tourism Day 2021 and at the inauguration of IIHM Global Campus. Now, this motto of this World Tourism Day or mandate of this World Tourism Day 2021 is this inclusive growth. And from a university perspective, I would like to put forward my views in this matter that in tourism is now it has become an area where there are scopes for professionals from different verticals. It requires professionals from IT background, it requires professionals from management background, it requires professionals from food science and technology background, from healthcare background, from entertainment background, from sports and what's not. So if we look at it, it is basically a melting pot of different professions of the futures. And that's why we are from university, we are very much interested to promote tourism as one of the formidable area where there will be the opportunity for numbers of professionals from different areas to work together in a seamless manner. And that's and for that purpose, we need to develop a culture, a mindset amongst us. At the same time, numbers of skilled professionals. Because of this pandemic situation, this tourism activity has disrupted to some extent, but that is true for many of the professions except information technology and healthcare areas. But within the shortest possible time, it has the potential to bounce back significantly. And what we believe there is a theory which is called Raleigh's theory that if we block the flow of water for some time, then whenever the blockage is removed, the gust of water becomes tremendous, and that comes out with a very much this formidable force, and that will happen to tourism sectors. We believe that within shortest possible time in the coming days, that it will bounce back with all its rigor, and for that purpose, we will be requiring a number of professionals to take care of all these activities. And this country, India, it is blessed with many unique things which can be capitalized to promote tourism in a significant manner. And government of India is continuously working in that directions with the association in taking support from different state governments, different private entrepreneurs, different bodies, and there will be this significant this gross income from these tourism activities in near future, which we are aspiring for. And it will definitely happen because this country, it has this uniqueness in terms of the diversity in nature's diversity, in human culture diversity, in different these areas of which promotes tourism, particularly food and beverages, particularly cultures, particularly this uniqueness of different places. So it can promote or it can support the tourism activities in many verticals like sports tourism, healthcare tourism, spiritual tourism, religious tourism, and carnivals of different natures. At my state here, at Bengal, this is the time for one of the biggest carnivals of this country, that is Durga Puja festivals. And here, there is enough opportunity to capitalize this in a professional manner to make it the marketable, to make it more this revenue fetching, and to make it an area where there will be career options for the youngsters of the future. So I believe that all these activities that will happen with our collaborative and concerted efforts, and all this international legendary, they are associated with us. Dr. Suborno Bose has taken a nice initiatives in introducing many niche programs with the support from this university, and with our this collaborative efforts and joint works, we will be achieving the height of excellence in tourism sectors, particularly as far as academics, research, skilled professionals generations is concerned. So with this, I would like to congratulate again to the organizers of today's programs, IIHM, and my sincerest thanks to all the panelists who are present over here from my university. I would like to welcome all of them And I believe that from their deliberations, all the participants will be benefited profoundly. And with this, I would like to conclude. Let me hand it over to Mr. Abdullah again. Thank you very much.
Right, over to you, Paul, to take it forward.
Thanks ever so much, Professor Maitra. It's now my great honour to introduce Mr. Rakesh Mathur, the Honorary President and founding member for the Responsible Tourism Society of India, former CEO BASS Hotels and former President WorldCom Heritage Hotels, currently serving as Director and Principal Advisor, Lord Hotels and Resorts, Woodbridge Guest Homes. Mr. Rakesh Mathur.
Thank you, Paul. We are talking about inclusive growth, so I'd just like to add a few points to what has already been said. We all know that tourism is one of the largest foreign exchange earners and one of the highest generators of employment. But certain other things that are very important to keep in mind is that tourism in India, and I'm specifically talking about India, has a very wide geographical spread across all kinds of terrain, which are in high density tourism destinations. Therefore, it provides an opportunity for travel to all segments of the traveling population: adventure, religious, sports, medical, natural, wildlife, shopping, history and heritage, and those who are knowledge seekers like yoga, Ayurveda, meditation, etc. And this helps further when we talk of inclusive growth in building infrastructure in these destinations. Tourism has led to infrastructure creation of road, rail, air, sewage, toilets also now, garbage disposal, and so on. It provides an experience for all segments like children, youth, adults, elderly. It leads to engagement with the local community, thereby resulting in sustenance of art, craft, handicraft, things like knitting, stitching, embroidery, crochet. A lot of people in towns, a lot of youngsters don't know these basic things, but it is in these rural tourist destinations in India where these are actually being maintained and sustained. Sustenance of local cuisine, sustenance of knowledge of yoga, Ayurveda, etc. Music, dance, and culture. So another very important point that I think Mr. David Foskett just mentioned was the connection. It leads to a certain bonding, connection of roots of people. People travel from one place to another and appreciate the culture and the environment of another place. So there is a lot of emotional and mental enrichment and satisfaction that flows out of all this. And in this whole process, not only have hotels grown, even homestay models which have benefited the local citizen have come up. And therefore, and it is, of course, we all know how tourism led to the revival of heritage properties. So I think tourism leads to all-round growth in all aspects of villages, towns, and cities. But some pitfalls that I would like to enumerate before we close down. For any tourism asset to be successful, it needs to be financially productive. Excuse me. Yeah, it needs to be financially productive. It should involve the local community and be financially beneficial to them. It should be conducted in a safe and honorable manner so as to protect the vulnerable segments of society like women and children and the differently abled. Proper governance has to ensure that both tourism service providers as well as tourists don't damage the environment. I'm not exaggerating when I say, and I've been in tourism for 47 years, it is the largest, in my opinion, one of the largest producers of waste, affluents, pollutants, and plastics, especially in the unorganized sector, which is about 70% of our country's service providers. And therefore, uncontrolled tourism can put a lot of stress on the destination and its infrastructure. Carrying capacity analysis is most important. And it's very important to lay down and enforce and implement a code of conduct for tourism service providers as well as for tourists. One point I wish to raise is that when you talk about a behavioral change in the mindset of both tourism service providers as well as tourists, we are talking about, to my mind, there is only one way in which it is possible. We are talking about virtually the entire traveling population or the catering population of the country. And there's only one way it is possible, and that is through education. And I have, at every occasion, I have said that we should introduce a responsible citizen subject in every school across the country. And most certainly our Indian Institute or International Institute of Hotel Managements must take upon themselves to communicate this to their students. Finally, I just want to add one more thing. Today's been a very, very good day for us as founder of the Responsible Tourism Society of India. I have just come from a function at the Ashoka Hotel conducted by the Ministry of Tourism and signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Tourism and the United Nations Environment Program to launch both these initiatives. One is the Responsible Traveler Campaign, and maybe sometime later I'll share it with Dr. Bose, Responsible Traveler Campaign, as well as certification of service providers, which we spoke about earlier in terms of hygiene and standards and so on. So both these are extremely important. And we've just signed an MOU with the ministry and the United Nations Environment Program, which takes it to the next level. So this is what I had to say about inclusive growth. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to all the people who've just tuned in on our Facebook page, to all 3.6 million people watching this live. You watching a discussion on tourism for inclusive growth, and we are celebrating the World Tourism Day 2021. Moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, the next celebrity coming up is, well, this is a fanboy moment for me. It's my absolute honor to welcome Padma Shri chef Sanjeev Kapoor, who's one of the most celebrated face of Indian cuisine. He's chef extraordinaire, runs a successful TV channel Food, hosted Khana Khazana cookery show on television for more than 17 years, author of 150 plus books, best-selling cookbooks, restaurateur, and winner of several culinary awards. The man who single-handedly, shaped the culinary profession today and took it to every child who dreams of becoming a chef. Absolute honor to have Chef Sanjeev Kapoor with us. Over to you, sir, to share a few words with us.
Thank you, Abdullah, for that kind introduction. And it was great to hear Rakesh and, of course, other speakers. Professor David Foskett, always passionate and right to the point. Congratulations to everyone on this great day of celebration. Tourism has to be celebrated. Tourism is, we look at it not only from a point of view of transportation of one person from one place to the other. If it was only transportation, we have been transporting many materials during the pandemic. There is food that goes from one place to the other. There are ships, there are aircrafts, fruits, nuts, and everything pulses, moves. But tourism is much more than just transportation of people visiting one place to the other. It's an experience. It's a meeting of mind, meeting of souls. That's what it provides. And I think in this year's theme of inclusiveness and sustainable tourism, I think it's imperative that we treat that passion, we bring that into food also, bring inclusiveness in the food also. I've been saying it for a few years now that next 20 years at least are it's the time for the East, and in that I put India right at the top. And with that, if we have to, Rakesh talked about behavioral change. I couldn't agree more. We all know it's a slow process, but it has to start now. It's not only time for discussion. I think pandemic has taught us that it is we should not wait, or we cannot wait. Whatever corrective actions that we have to take, whether through our environment, through our selves, through in tourism, in food, whatever, it has to start today. I remember talking to Mr. Amitabh Kant, and he said on behavioral changes, he was saying that it's a slow elephant, that it takes time to get up, but once it gets up, then it moves like a king and rules like a king. And I think the power that we have in this part of the world, I'll focus on India. We, in terms of, we control 1/6 of the land mass. And why do I say that? It's just because of the number of people that are there. So it is not only the population, but in terms of the power that we can bring in, especially that we can add to the tourism, whether as a service provider or as tourists. I think both role of an Indian, no matter where an Indian is, where they live, where they reside, which part of the world they are, I think they have a big responsibility towards this inclusive and sustainable tourism. And on food, I can tell you that lot of focus has started to go on the healthier food options. And I can tell you that from India, we at village level is something we have been eating a lot of healthy food. And that is what we are bringing it back into cities within India. And we would want people who come into India, we want this wisdom to go out everywhere. Healthier Indian foods from different parts of India, and bring whole of India together, no matter what the economic reasons may be to, I know whenever we talk about this is for business, but I think there is when we talk of responsibility, it goes above business also. It goes about any transaction that is there. So let's, from my side, I can say this, that healthy foods, if we were to talk, I think in last 2 years, the world has understood power of turmeric more. Intrinsically Indian, very Indian. So it is not only about turmeric lattes that world has to taste. It is all the goodness, whether it's the antiseptic, antimicrobial, antifungicidal, anti-aging, so many properties turmeric has. In what form can we deliver that in a more responsible way? One of our states, Meghalaya, produces world's best turmeric, and most of it is organically grown. That's the beauty of it. We have to make that everything that we do is done like that. And on this World Tourism Day, which has brought in so many minds together through power of Dr. Bose and IIHM. Congratulations to IIHM for bringing all these minds together. Let's make a promise, and I'll start from the food, that we promise to bring in inclusiveness and sustainability when it comes to foods from India, one step at a time. Thank you.
All right, before I pass it over, let me just quickly sum up. Chef Kapoor, you picked up some very important points today. We made it, we've noted these points, and once all the speakers finish, we will be discussing these points. I think you talked about the movement of logistics. When we talk about responsible tourism, inclusivity, I think logistics and transportation takes tourism to the last mile. And that's what we need to talk about of inclusivity. The turmeric point you picked up was absolutely bang on the subject of inclusivity, because it's not just about tourist and tourism. It's about responsibly producing things organically as well. Well, thank you for these points. Mr. Mathur, you made some very important point here about the garbage disposal and homestays and uncontrolled tourism. Very interesting point. We're going to come back to you. And of course, Professor Saikat Maitra, you also picked up some very important points of making sure of working together from different streams, requirement of the skilled professionals today, and of course, tourism in sports, tourism in spirituality, in religious tourism. And I think these are points that we will discuss and we will get back. Well, before I come back to all these points, I'll pass it over to Paul Walsh, my dearest friend, to take this program forward. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Abdullah. Yes, some great points. We're really hearing some really worthwhile, great information coming out. Lots of really enjoying this session so far. So it's stick with us. It's only going to get better. So it's now my honor to introduce His Highness Maharaja Gaj Singh Ji, custodian of the House of Marwar. Having served as India's High Commissioner to Trinidad and Tobago, as well as a term in the Rajya Sabha, His Highness Gaj Singh Ji has led heritage hotel development by converting his own palaces into hotels, and is known for many socially responsible setups in the state of Rajasthan. My delight to welcome His Excellency Maharaja Gaj Singh Ji.
Dear guests, staff, members and students of the International Institution of Hotel Management, let me first of all congratulate each one of you on this World Tourism Day. I would also like to congratulate IIHM team for the inauguration of this IIHM Global Center for Tourism and Hospitality Research. This is a great initiative, and I hope that it will be fruitful for research of various trends in the tourism sector. You are aware that everyone amongst us is a fellow tourist to various cities, states, and countries. Hence, I believe each one of us play an important role in the growing economy of the tourism sector. This year's theme is Tourism for Inclusive Growth, and the motto of the special day is to spread awareness about tourism's social, cultural, political, and economic value, and the contribution that this industry makes towards reaching sustainable development. But sadly, this pandemic has hit out against our industry the worst, as international travel and lockdown has halted movement across cities and countries too. We are all facing the same problem. And of course, life is tough, but this too shall pass and we shall overcome. We must have experienced yourself that from the time you begin any journey, you indirectly or directly promote employment, be it your cab driver, the employees of the railways, aviation, hotels, homestays, and restaurants, or handloom shops, guides, museums, heritage sites that you visit. You are indirectly contributing towards their economy. It is a process of money flow that we collectively contribute to. This is not an individual's growth, rather the growth of the entire tourism support structure. I would personally recommend to each one of you to explore your own country as it opens up, and international tourism is still restricted. You learn so much through travel and dispel ignorance about each other. I hope all of you have a great discussion today and wish you all the best to remain safe, industrious, and prosperous, and to make India Atmanirbhar and strong. Jai Bharat.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's always great to hear from true icons of tourism. We now move along and we have our next speaker, our next guest, Miss Anita Mendiratta, the founder and president of Anita Mendiratta and Associates, London, and advisor to the Secretary General of the UNWTO, Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili. Anita Mendiratta is a published author and committed tourism and development practitioner, working closely with leaders in governments, business, and international organizations across tourism, aviation, and the development sectors. Anita, over to you.
Thank you very much, and a very loving namaste to everyone, and a very happy World Tourism Day. I'm very grateful to have the chance to speak to you today, and thank you for this opportunity. And as always, my immense congratulations to IIHM for everything that you are doing for the global community, and especially on this special day of inauguration. And I'm delighted that my Secretary General, Zurab Pololikashvili, has been able to join and to make that special message to you and your leadership. In terms of the theme of this year's World Tourism Day, it's incredibly important, and I say that for 4 reasons. We've always talked about inclusivity in travel and tourism, but as has been said by many speakers, the global pandemic has forced us to all look very seriously at how we build forward better, how we make a stronger tourism community in the future. I said 4 reasons because of this. Firstly, we know that travel and tourism is fundamentally important to small and medium enterprises around the world. We saw that with the global pandemic, so many businesses shut down because they simply could not survive without any of the mobility of the economy or of the tourism community that actually put them at risk by then not being available for 1.5 years effectively. So we have that at an SME level. We also have it at the level in terms of youth. So many youth that we know have been forced to leave the industry because they're forced to look for jobs elsewhere. We, particularly at IIHM as the education community, need to make sure that we re-inspire and re-engage youth to get them to recognize once again that this is one of the most remarkable professions and vocations to be a part of. But we need to take care of youth. We need to make sure that they feel valued, they feel engaged, they feel supported, and they feel protected, which is why, as we've always said, championing and role modeling is absolutely vital so that no young person ever feels that in a face of challenge, they're going to be left alone. We also talk very much about women, and we talk about the role of women in society and particularly in the tourism economy. 80% of businesses are SMEs, as I said earlier, that are in the tourism economy. More than 50% are coming through the employment of women, which is remarkable for our industry being a real champion of equality and diversity. That's a third reason. But also importantly, we need to look at this environmentally. We talk about sustainable tourism development. That sustainable tourism development is not just economic, social, and cultural, but as we've always said, environmental. We need to make sure that we protect everything that Mother Nature has given us. So when we talk about inclusivity and the theme of World Tourism Day this year, we look at it from the point of view of true inclusivity, of not just making sure that tourism is good for the traveler, but also the places traveled to and the people and environments of those places. So tourism and inclusive growth is all about making sure that the entire ecosystem, current and future, of our industry is protected, is promoted, and is something that we can feel we proudly look to in the future as a genuine ongoing force for good. So as we celebrate World Tourism Day, as IIHM once again brings the world together and inspires the future of tourism, I thank you for the great honor and pleasure of being with you. I'm very grateful to be a part of this community, a very loving Dhanyavad, and again, a very happy World Tourism Day.
Thank you ever so much, Anita. Lovely, again, inspiring words, inspiring words. Thank you ever so much. We move along. We now have Mr. Mike Bertet, Director of Aquasea UK, qualified chef with 30+ years of experience and a passion for the fish and seafood industry, and a great friend of IIHM, I might add, helping global food service engage with responsible and sustainable seafood. Mr. Mike Bertet, over to you. Have we lost Mike?
I guess we missed him out here, so possibly he logged out. So Paul, let's
saw a flash of him.
Yeah, I saw him here, but nevertheless, I guess he logged out. So meanwhile, we will go forward, ladies and gentlemen. I do see Mike coming back again. I can't see him logging again. Bear with me for a second, requesting the team to spotlight Mike. There you are. All right, there he is.
Over to you, Mike.
Hello, can you see me and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I can't see you or hear you. I can hear you, sorry. Sorry about that, a little technical hitch. I am, in Professor David Foskett's terms, a visitor today to Cyprus, coming to see my daughter. So, but I'm so honored to be able to take time out from my visit here to speak with such distinguished guests. And I'm minded to remind myself that the United Nations some years ago asked the Prime Minister of Norway, Gro Harlem Brundtland, if she would conduct a review of the sustainability of our planet, really. You know, what do we do? Where do we go from here? And one of the messages she gave us was to kind of help define sustainability. You know, this is always a difficult thing to explain to people. And it's one that I use with chefs, with hotel managers, with maitre d's, etc., across the world. And it's meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And, you know, that says it all. There are some great messages coming through here today. And we're talking about people. I'm very, very pleased to say that one of the things I'm involved in is further down the line, the SDGs, which number 14 supports life underwater. One of the things I think that the hospitality industry can do, because they're so focused on their own environment, their own people, the sustainability of everything within the hotel, restaurant, hospitality complex. But the one thing that they can do is look towards the horizon. Where did their food come from? Where did the protein, where did the vegetables, where did the rice, etc., come from? And look to sustainably populate their menus. And as you know, one of the things that I focus on is seafood and how we look after the people that fish the seafood, how we look after the stocks, the fish stocks. And I'm very pleased to now be involved in writing a masterclass in sustainability for the centre. I think that this is something that can be a showcase. And whilst I've been talking to chefs and front of house staff, I've realised, and Sanjeev Kapoor has reminded me, that we really need the CEOs. We need the directors. We need the Rakesh Mathur. We need the House of Marwar, Gaj Singh Jr. We need the leadership to set the scene. And you know, Sanjeev said it's the elephant getting up and getting going. We need that elephant to get up and going with a bit of pace. And if the CEOs set the scene for sustainable tourism and really understand it and get their directors to understand it, I think that will be fantastic. And in terms of the seafood, you have to remind yourselves that there are fishermen, there are aquaculture farmers, there are process staff. All of these need to be social welfare looked after. They need a worker voice. So look further down your supply chain and make sure that we're looking after it. It would be remiss of me to let you think that I'm in a bit of a closed room here. I hope my camera is still working, because I'm going to shortly get back to the other part of my visit here. I hope you can see this. So, Professor David Foskett, I'm not in England in all the bad weather. I'm actually over here in Cyprus. Many congratulations to Dr. Bose for this initiative. I think it's fabulous. I think it's groundbreaking, and I wish the centre every good luck going forward. Thank you.
Well, there we go, Mike. Mike has made us all very green with envy. I'll take my camera out in a moment and show you all the gathering monsoon clouds over Kolkata. And what three great speakers, all from, you know, I would say very different backgrounds, very different perceptions, but all with the same message. His Excellency Maharaja Gaj Singh talked about how we're all tourists, and I think we all are, especially Mike just at the moment, a bit more than any of us, but really that's what we all are. Everybody at every level is a tourist. It's important to all of us, our own psychology, our own minds, our own futures, and it can really create a value towards sustainable development was one of his very key messages, I think, and how that feeds down into employment across all types of industries and sectors. Anita Mendiratta, I mean, fantastic presentation. The 4 points, travel and tourism, critical to SME businesses, absolutely. The critical importance of youth, and I know how inspiring it is that IIHM are maintaining these active dialogues even during the terrible pandemic lockdowns we've had. It's really important that young people can see role models, can have access, and can really inspire others and grow within the tourism industry. The role of women in the tourism and economy, absolutely vital. The statistics are just very clear. And finally, which leads us nicely on to Mike's comments, protecting nature. I love this idea of true inclusivity, people and places. We have to leave everything, you know, it's that old expression, leave only footprints. And then we come to Mike, of course, an expert on sustainability, particularly around the oceans and seafood. We're really looking forward to the masterclass in sustainability. In a way, this generation are very aware. It's going to be something that they really want to understand. They're keen to understand. So how timely is that? Reaching our CEOs with these messages, but also the voice of the worker, critical. So I think 3 fantastic presentations we've just heard. And now I'll pass back to Abdullah for the next part of our day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to all the people who've just logged in on our Facebook, to all the 3.6 million people currently watching this. Well, you are watching the celebration of the World Tourism Day 2021 with discussions happening on the theme Tourism for Inclusive Growth. Ladies and gentlemen, we are opening the chat box now for all of you to put your questions. And as we go to the next 2 speakers, post that we'll open the crossfire session, where we will be bringing in speakers back again and discussing about the points that they've talked about. Well, this is your chance to ask your questions to all the stalwarts today who've logged in from different parts of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward, absolute honor to welcome the CEO of Roseate Hotels and Resorts, Mr. Kapoor. He has served the hospitality industry for over 22 years with iconic hotel brands like the Oberoi Group, the Taj Group of Hotels, the Leela Hotels and Resorts, and has many laurels to his credit. He's currently the CEO of Roseate Hotels and Resorts. An absolute pleasure to have him with us on this show, talking about tourism for inclusivity. Welcome, Mr. Kapoor, and over to you to share your views.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullah. First of all, I would like to congratulate Dr. Bose, IIHM, and every faculty of IIHM for yet another achievement, I would say. Launching the Center of Global Research is an excellent initiative which has been taken by IIHM and the team. It is definitely one of the most vibrant hotel management institutes, I would say, in the world at this point of time. I can only see actually moving ahead the way probably the energy and the zeal which is going forward. I can only see it turning to be a global university very soon, where hundreds and thousands of students are going to come from all across the globe to do research, gain knowledge, and obviously get the expertise from the faculty present out there. It's a pleasure indeed to be part of one of the best industries in the world, and that's called as the tourism industry, I would say. And we directly or indirectly, I guess we in hospitality industry touch every human being on earth out here. I would also say that with age, the wisdom comes, and with the travel comes the understanding and learning. So it's extremely important. And being social animals, we are all waiting for our travel to begin, especially the international travel, I would say. And for us also, what we always talk about travel is an investment in yourself, because that's what it's important for you to grow, see what's happening outside, see what's happening within your country, and learn immensely from there. I would also like to sum up on the phrase that of all the books in the world, the best stories are always found in the pages of the passport. So the more you travel, the better you learn. The better you learn, obviously, the faster you grow in the world. Every single life is touched by the tourism, as I said, in some way or the other. And we only as hoteliers, we only want these things to grow forward. We would love to give this world, I would say, to our future generation in a much better way than what we've got from our probably previous generations. Travel definitely is opening up now. We see students back in the colleges. So it's a very, very positive, a very healthy and a happier sign to see forward. The festive season are obviously coming across right now for every one of us, which I guess we've been missing for the last 18 months. So it's, in all probabilities, I see it's a much better place to stay, come, travel now in. We certainly are moving ahead in a very, very positive world, a very, very healthier world right now. And I wish all the very best to everybody. And thank you so much once again for having me out here. Thank you.
All right, so what do you, Paul?
Yes, over to me. Thank you, Mr. Kapoor. It's now my pleasure to introduce our last formal speaker for this afternoon, or this morning, depending on where you are, Mr. Carlal Vaz, National President of SKL International India, Chairman and CEO of Charson Advisory Services, and CEO and Strategy Director for Destination Canada. Carlal Vaz is, I mentioned, currently serving as the National President of SKAL International India. Mr. Vaz, over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Warm greetings to Dr. Suborno Bose, founder of IIHM, and His Excellency, the Secretary General of UNWTO, eminent panelists, friends, colleagues, and industry stalwarts that are gathered here this early this evening in India. It's a pleasure to be once again associated with an event hosted by IIHM. I thought of addressing today the subject on inclusive tourism with a little bit of a twist. And I know my friend Abdullah always enjoys a little bit of the lemon twist. So I'm going to add a little bit of a twist. While we talk about inclusive tourism, we should also attach this in a way to sustainable tourism and exclusive tourism. When you look at inclusive tourism, it means to many people addressing the weaker sections of society, economically weaker sections of society, people of determination. I think that's the better term as opposed to disabled, because there are different types of determination that people suffer from. There are different types of ethnicities that come into context. But inclusive tourism also means that we should look at other sectors of our industry. We tend to concentrate more on hospitality and aviation. But what about all the other ancillary industries that serve as the backbone of our industry?
the IT companies that give us the software that run everything from accounting to check-in at an airport or check-in at a hotel, whether it's a Fidalgo system, software, or anything else that a hotel uses? What about the companies that process and manufacture the conveyor belts that take our bags into the aircraft and bring them back? What about the ground operators that service all the airlines like Jalebi and Donata and so many more? What about the catering companies, Taj Sats or Ambassador Skyship and so many more that dot the earth? What about all the other companies involved in this consumer journey of inclusive tourism? I think we should learn to have a broader view of what we mean by inclusive tourism. And the reason I say this is because it has its effect on sustainable tourism and therefore its effect also on exclusive tourism. Exclusive tourism to me is one very clear example that highlights the pull, the tug of war that will go on between sustainable tourism and exclusive tourism. Space tourism. What about all that money that is spent for those few to experience space? And what does that have its effect on sustainable tourism or our carbon footprint? I think these are the topics that we should look at in the future. And of course, the larger aspect of inclusive tourism. How does this help the vision of taking inclusive tourism to the next level? There is no solution. It's a topic that one can debate and challenge at different levels. And as the months and years roll by, I think we'll have a lot of discussion on this topic of sustainability with inclusive and exclusive on either ends. With that, I just want to thank all of you for inviting me. And I look forward to many more engaging sessions with all of you. And all the very best to IIHM and its new Center of Excellence.
Thank you, Mr. Kaul. It was an absolute pleasure to listen to you. And as you always bring in one very important point to discuss, well, this time, today, we are going to talk about space tourism and its effect, whether we should do it or not. Well, we will come back to you, but in the question and answer session, the chat box is on. Please put in your questions there. We've got some questions, but the first question we'll take is to Professor David Foskett. Ladies and gentlemen, today was the inauguration of IIHM Global Center of Hospitality and Tourism Research by the Honorable Secretary General of UNWTO, Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili, in the first part of the event. Professor Foskett, you talked about research, you talked about how to prevent similar situations in the future. You talked about something very, very pertinent and important as to how do we deal if something like this come in the future. So my question to you is that what is your idea of working on something like this through research? What kind of research you feel, or what is the next step in research that mankind or tourism should do in order to make sure that we work on something that possibly gives us a tinkling that something like this, like COVID, is about to come, or how to prevent it? Some more clarity of thought from you, Professor Foskett.
Yeah, I think that this is very important in terms of safety for travel, safety when you reach your destination in a hotel. How safe are we traveling in terms of viruses, bacteria, infections? How safe are hotels in terms of how we clean in the future, how we sanitize, so we can actually, if we are faced with another deadly virus, how we can prevent it from being infectious in the future. For example, I sat next to an engineer who was working on filtration systems for cruise ships and hotels, whereby they're looking at filtrating the air so there are no airborne viruses, that they don't get through the system. And they're researching this, and this type of research we need. And how effective would this be, for example, on cruise ships? How effective would this be on airlines? Airlines say it's effective, but how effective is it? And also, you know, just in shops, I know many people said to me, I've caught COVID, but the only place I've been is actually shopping. So how do we make it safe? How do we make the environment safe in the future for travel so that we don't have to close hotels? We don't have to close hotels. We don't have to lock down. This is the key issue, how we prevent lockdown any lockdown in the future. And I know that, for example, in restaurants now, it's very common to have sanitizer on every table, hand sanitizer on any table. How effective is this? We don't know. Also, I think it's important that we do research into how realistic is it to ask people to be double jabbed? How realistic is it for vaccine passports? Some countries are against vaccine passports, but surely if vaccine passports are a way forward for safety, should we not implement this? I mean, all these are questions that have to be answered, because we cannot face another lockdown, you know, open, close, etc. Because this is the damage that it's done. And I know that researchers are looking at the moment at the mental health damage this is done to young people, and how schools have been closed as well, and trying to catch up. So there's lots of research needs to be done, how to prevent any more future lockdown, and how safe we are to travel, how safe are we to stay in hotels. And I think there's a lot of questions and research that needs to be looked at very carefully. Another thing I was asked the weekend, I was asked only on Saturday, can you recommend antibacterial and antiviral paint for my restaurant and my kitchen? Yeah, and there are companies now who are researching antiviral paint, antiviral flooring to prevent contamination in the future. I'm not a microbiologist. I understand microbiology. I'm certainly not a virologist, but I think all this has to be looked at and researched in the future. We need, in order for tourism to be sustainable, we certainly need for it to be safe.
Fantastic, great. I think these are very important points you've made. I'll bring in my colleague Paul here to take this forward. Paul.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Abdullah. I'd like to address a question to Professor Maitra, if I may. I hope he's still with us. And that's really around, he mentioned in his presentation, this idea of a melting pot of professions, really interesting. And then a few of the other presenters, they mentioned this idea of the youth and how we can engage with youth and how important it is in the future that we engage with youth. And obviously, as the Vice-Chancellor of a university in West Bengal, one of your key priorities is how you can engage with youth. So I'd just like to hear some of your thoughts on how the university is taking forward those ideas of engaging with youth, re-energizing youth within the university context.
Professor Maitra?
Oh.
Professor Maitra? Sir, Paul, if you could just repeat the question for Mr.
Sure. Yes, Professor Maitra. My question was regarding youth and how the university and how your ideas around how you can engage with youth going forward to make sure that they aren't completely disjointed from educational and employment opportunities, and really thinking about that idea that you talked about, the melting pot of professions that is required within sustainable tourism. So perhaps you have some thoughts on how you'll engage, how you'll inspire youth going forward.
Yeah, from the university, what I would like to propose to introduce the courses and different verticals, particularly in the form of certificates, diploma, PG diploma, degree, postgraduates. And of the late, what we have introduced, research programs also, what many universities have not yet done. From this university, we have introduced programs, PhD programs in travel and tourism, so that numbers of professionals, they can be, this processed through our academic programs. And here from this university, what we have done, we have forged an LA with different professional organizations who are experts in this particular area to bring more professional cultures, skill, and the professional all attributes in our existing academic systems. And because this is an area where we need a professional flavor in conducting these types of programs. And at the same time, here what we are seeing that the course curriculum has to be carefully designed with the inputs from different these related and allied areas, particularly information technology management and applied sciences and other areas as deemed fit for making this course sustainable, effective, and to fulfill the need of the market in near future. So we are continuously working on this. We are continuously looking forward what are the opportunities are emerging, and accordingly how we can develop our manpower, how we can impart skill to our existing these learning communities, the students, giving them more practical oriented programs, giving them more opportunity for getting hands-on training programs. Because of this pandemic situation, university education has suffered a jolt because of this disruptive situation. But through digital platform, we are trying to continue all the practices. And very soon in near future, we'll be engaging our students in real practical experiences, visiting this university campus and institute campus where these types of training will be organized. And we are, continuously sending the students to different organizations as interns for getting, these professionals flavors and professionals experiences. So this is a continual ongoing process. We are working in tandem with, this strong alliance with different stakeholders, with our academicians, professional bodies, professional peoples, and we believe that with our all these sustained efforts, the result will be, this fruit bearing in near futures, and more numbers of skilled professionals to take care of the tourism market, emerging tourism market of this country, as well as international market that will be developed from our systems.
Thank you ever so much, Professor Maitra. I really like the idea of how you'll develop different ideas to get more, to keep the youth engaged. Lots of young people been sitting at home struggling with online courses. So this idea of doing more practical training, more practical courses is really welcome, I think. I'd now like to turn to Miss Anita Mendiratta to ask a little sort of follow-up question, really. You mentioned the 4 points that are really critical to sustainable or tourism for inclusive growth. And I wondered if you could share with us all, if you have a best practice that you've seen, observed in your work that you can share with us. Particularly, I'm interested in how you mentioned the role of women in the tourism economy. But if you have any best practice you could share with us that we can perhaps take some ideas from, take some learning from.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I must say, I really quite like your question, because we're at a time where it's difficult to have best practice when we're in a scenario where we're rebuilding the industry itself. So in many ways, this is our opportunity to redesign based on what we know was not working in the past. That said, I think what is important is that we can't be doing this through trial and error. So what's been very important going forward is that when it comes to best practice, a lot of it is best principles at this point in time, which is why, and I give as an example, when the challenge of the pandemic started and we across the world, whether we were in tourism or not, we're trying to understand the questions, not even figure out what the answers are. One of the first things that the UNWTO did was create a coalition with the World Health Organization, the ILO, the World, the International Education-Based Institute as well, with ICAO, which is about aviation, with all of these different entities to make sure that a solution was being found for tourism development and tourism reactivation that was safe, that was integrated, that recognized interdependencies, and was very much about bringing jobs back for youth and for women itself. That practice, that principle put in place from the beginning of the pandemic, a way of monitoring, again, safe, strong, and sustainable recovery. On top of that, what the UNWTO has been doing is a great number of innovation and education programs leveraging technology and very much focusing on women and youth. So as I say, it's very difficult right now to be able to say what is best practice when we're living in a very clear next normal of what the tourism world is going to be. What I would encourage people doing is going onto the UNWTO website, which is unwto.org, to take a look at what is happening, particularly in the education area of rebuilding the tourism industry and restarting. And as I say, a very safe, secure, and sustainable way. So we have momentum now of job creation, job protection, education, and forward building of our industry in a way that is definitely a force for good for the long term for both the visitors and the visited.
Thanks ever so much, Anita. I think that, I mean, the small lesson I draw from that in terms of best practice is this idea of coalitions and partnerships. And I think that's really the way forward. We have to be inclusive with who we involve, as well as who, you know, thinking about how we can all be inclusive in tourism, but the people who are delivering services, the people who are providing, who are being tourists, that there really has to be this going forward. We have to be partners. We have to work together to make things sustainable. And I like that, I think reflects really nicely in this group that we have here today. And we have people represented from all over the world, but also from all different types of organizations. So thank you.
Well, if I can just make a very quick comment, because you said something really critical about, again, the future of tourism. What has happened in the last year and a half has demonstrated we are not an industry that needs to integrate and interconnect. We're interdependent. We require small businesses, and we need small businesses as part of our industry. We need youth as part of our industry. We need women, we need men, we need everyone involved. And unless everyone is involved, we can't rebuild our industry. So what you're saying is important in that we've all been humbled to recognize without these partnerships, we don't have a future industry. So that's where the strength is going to come from and must come from.
Brilliant. I mean, it's a message that I think a number of speakers have mentioned, how this interdependence is critical, and it's from the CEOs to the man catching fish on a beach in India. Everybody's as important and as critical to the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're now going to kind of switch to Mr. Mathur, Rakesh Mathur, President of the Responsible Tourism Society of India. Another really inspiring presentation, sir. I took a lot from it, a lot of ideas. And I was interested, you mentioned that you've just signed or just come to 2 agreements with the tourism ministry, with different, again, with a different group of bodies to deliver, in particular, this idea of the responsible traveller. And I think it would be really interesting if we can all hear a little bit about your vision, about your ideas around being, which we all are, responsible travellers. I think you may be on mute, sir. There we go.
Yeah. Let me begin by mentioning that our journey began soon after 2000, when due to 9/11, global tourism took a backseat and the real focus shifted to domestic tourism. However, this growth in domestic tourism came with a lot of side effects, the most visible being littering of the countryside and pristine destinations virtually being treated as garbage bins. And simultaneously, the role of the non-biodegradable elements and plastics that began to glare at us in the face. So 2008, the Responsible Tourism Society was established with a view to bring about sensitization in the tourism fraternity about the necessity of maintaining a sustainable business model. As time went by, we conducted, amongst the things that we've done, I'd like to just quickly go through the list. We worked with the Ministry of Tourism to establish the sustainable tourism criteria of India. And also we devised a code of conduct for what we call safe and honorable tourism, which essentially protects the vulnerable elements in society. We've conducted about 20 workshops in about 18 cities all over India. We've published an environment handbook, which is updated every year. And, through that, we exchange best practices. We have newsletters, we have other publications. We've established a resource center where anybody who wants, we are trying to slowly and steadily build a library on the subject. We're also launching a self-certification scheme. Actually, there are two schemes that are being launched. One was launched today, the other one is coming up. One is the Responsible Traveler Campaign. Now, this is purely a campaign which is going to be on social as well as television media, which will talk about, and the Ministry of Tourism will be supporting this campaign, which will talk about how to be a responsible traveler. And similarly, it has to filter down to all sections of society, because India has a huge variety of people who travel from the low budget to the extremely high budget. We have launched, I spoke about the self-certification scheme, which addresses issues about hygiene and sanitation and garbage and waste disposal and things like that. We've established the ecotourism policy for a state called Manipur in India, and we are currently working with 3 states, Himachal Pradesh, Odisha, and Meghalaya, to establish their ecotourism policies. So, with all these initiatives, we've created an environment charter, things like that. Now, with all these initiatives, we hope to bring about a change in the way, in the behavior of both the tourists as well as the tourism service providers. We've been at it for since 2008, and it's been a very uphill task, purely because of the sheer numbers involved. But I must say that today was a very encouraging day when both UNEP as well as the ministry joined hands with us. I think basically this is what I have to say. And today was a day when the industry also kind of expressed their desire to support us in whatever we were doing. So this is what we are doing right now.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Really interesting. I think the ideas around this being a responsible traveler are really going to grow.
Sorry, I may just add one more point. We've been making a very, very strong pitch for today. The ministers were present, that every school in India, and I think I mentioned it earlier, that every educational institution in India must have a responsible citizen, whether you call it a curriculum or a subject or an interaction. We don't need to have examinations on this subject. We need to have an interactive session. And secondly, there is a very, very urgent need in India to do carrying capacity studies in most of our high density tourist destinations. So I think these were two things which I communicated today at the end of my talk to the ministers. Thank you. Please go on.
Thank you, Mr. Mathur. That's great. No, very, very welcome comments. A few of the questions in the comments have been around the idea of waste and how we can become more responsible for waste. And I think if we can encourage young children from a young age to think about waste and where it's disposed of and how it's dealt with, then that's only good for all of us. I'm certainly very happy that India now has blue flag beaches around the country, and they are really, really amazing to be at and to see. I think we're going to go back to Abdullah now, who has more questions. Abdullah.
Yes. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so very much for moderating this. Ladies and gentlemen, we are just a minute over than for the program that was scheduled. But, I'll just quickly get in for a quick chat. I'll bring in Mr. Carl Vaz and Mike for a quick discussion. Well, we've got two questions that have been posted on the chat box to both of you. This question is, so I'll merge both the questions, and I want both of you to comment. One of the questions says is, what is the future of worldwide perishable trade, which is one of the biggest reasons for fossil fuel consumption and transport? And the second question is, steps are being taken to check the plastic pollution. So, both of you are related. And of course, Mike, you work very, very closely on this topic. So I'll bring you here. And Mr. Vaz always comes up with amazing ideas about tourism and inclusivity. He talked about space tourism. We don't have time today to talk about it, but yes, he's talking about a lot of inclusivity. And I guess these two questions I'll ask you to answer. First, over to Mike.
Thanks very much, Abdullah. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to answer this question very eruditely or honestly because I didn't know the answer. But I do know some of the answers now. We want protein. We want good, nutritious protein. And the United Nations set us on a course some years ago when they said that the solution is going to be aquaculture, which is, it's a very nutritious piece of protein. And of course, the benefits of growing aquaculture is that it really, really does reduce greenhouse gas emissions from methane, say, from cows and sheep and pork, etc. It requires very little food because, in comparison, to land-based animals, because of course it doesn't need to support its weight in terms of gravity. So its diet consumes a lot less protein. And in answer to the question about how that's going to kind of reduce greenhouse gases, I'm working on a project to produce land-based aquaculture here in the UK with king prawns, with salmon, and with other species. And of course, as soon as you do that, you can position those farms right next to the processors. You can site those farms on land right next to the big conurbations. And you're seeing it now around the world, in Japan, in France, in China, in the US. And that, the very act of putting that production of protein next to big populations means that you're taking thousands and thousands of trucks off the road because your last mile of distribution becomes much smaller. So I know we're over time, so I won't bang on, but recirculating aquaculture systems and producing aquaculture close to tourist populations, close to big cities globally, it's happening. It's going to take a lot of methane, a lot of carbon dioxide off the road, and growing aquaculture is the way forward.
Fantastic. Carl, your point.
Well, Abdullah, I'd just like to say that, unfortunately, COVID has done this to us. We have a lot of these masks and we have a lot of these sanitizer bottles that are now being dumped by the millions in tonnage into landfill sites or into the oceans. And this is really a challenge. So I know we are over time, but I'll just give you one possible solution. Tourists love bragging rights. That's what makes social media so powerful. The selfies, the posts are all, in a way, a translation of bragging rights. So if we can find not only the policy makers, the influencers, the policy makers, but also the leaders in industry, especially on the travel trade and tour operating line, create packages where we empower, and I'll use the word empower, our consumers or travelers to actually aid in disposing or collecting and disposing of all of this garbage for bragging rights, whether it is working alongside celebrities, working alongside government officials, because we've seen how government officials also take the brush and the broom onto the streets. I'm saying, let's think innovatively. Who would have thought about, let's say 20 years ago, we would have farm to table and you'd go and pick up your own potatoes and then take it and get it cooked and pay a premium for it? Who would have thought that you would go and pick up your own apples, put them into a basket and call that a novel idea and pay an arm and a leg for that experience? So why don't we find a way to package picking up garbage and getting rid of it? So on a lighter note, maybe that might help you out, Abdullah, on this question.
All right, thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. Time's really out now. I wish I could continue talking and discussing the inclusivity in tourism, when always with stalwarts like you, I guess 1.5 hours is too less. And I'm sure, just to recap it for all of you, if ever there is an encyclopedia that is printed on tourism for inclusivity, this 1.5 hours will go in the things to remember at the end of the chapter for people to summarize what inclusivity in tourism is all about. Ladies and gentlemen, just about time, I'll call in the chairman, the chairman and CEO of IIHM, Dr. Suborno Bose, for his sum up remarks and for his views on this 1 hour, 37 minutes of fiery question and chat on tourism for inclusivity. Over to you, Dr. Bose.
Thanks, Abdullah. I think once again, very good evening to all the speakers, participants, and of course, thousands of people who are actually viewed on the social media, on the Facebook, YouTube, and which will be posted in other social media. I'm happy to say that over 100 media houses have covered today's program, over 100 globally, and very happy the way we celebrated the very, very historic World Tourism Day 2021. And like to thank all the speakers, the panelists, for their unstinted support as always. And of course, very, very big thanks to the Secretary General, His Excellency, for inaugurating officially the IIHM Global Center for Tourism and Hospitality Research. In this context, I must take a special minute to thank our fellow of IIHM and very close friend, Anita being speaker today, Anita Mendiratta. It is only because of her hard work and her influence and that we were able to get the Secretary General to inaugurate this global center. So thank you, Anita Mendiratta, for your unstinted support. And as always, it's such a pleasure to have you. And it's such a pleasure to have everyone who have come here in spite of their very busy schedule. Everybody in the hospitality and tourism sector are busy today with different webinars, seminars, whether it's virtual or it's physical. And select to thank everyone for being with us, for supporting us. And I'm sure that this is going to be one very, very global, very world-class, very cutting-edge center for tourism and hospitality research. You will all be very proud of. We'll all work together to make sure that this becomes one of the best in the world. So with that, I'd like to wish all of you once again on this very historic World Tourism Day 2021. And we all hope that things are getting into getting better and better and better, and we'll all be almost normal sometime this year, next year, and hopefully or before that. And we are very positive, very optimistic at IIHM that things are going to be better quite soon. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone and like to also invite Professor David Foskett to come and say the closing remark. David Foskett, please. You are muted, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bose, as inspiring as ever. What a wonderful conversation, discussion we've had with so many eminent speakers, and it's been a most enlightening day for me. And I will say to you, please all stay safe. The way people are reacting in London as if the pandemic was over, no face masks, people going about their business. And I think that it's all too soon. There are 30,000 infections a day. And as I said before, we have to make sure we're all safe. So I want to say to you, please all stay safe. Thank you for your very inspiring words, a wonderful discussion, and we look forward to your input in the future. Lastly, I'd like to thank, as always, IIHM and their entrepreneurial, wonderful CEO, Dr. Bose, for his vision of bringing us all together. And thank you to the staff of IIHM. Thank you all, most sincerely. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Bose. Thank you, Professor Foskett. Ladies and gentlemen, today, 27th of September, World Tourism Day marks also the inauguration of IIHM Global Center of Hospitality and Tourism Research. A big, big thank you to both of you. Very big thank you to the Honorable Secretary General of UNWTO, Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili, Mr. Eric Kemili, Ambassador of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, Professor Saikat Maitra, Honorable Vice-Chancellor of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University, West Bengal, Mr. Rakesh Mathur, Honorary President and Founding Member for the Responsible Tourism Society of India, celebrity Chef Sanjeev Kapoor for joining in from his busy schedule today from a meeting, His Highness Maharaja Gat Singh Ji, Custodian of the House of Marwar, Miss Anita Mendiratta, Founder and President, Anita Mendiratta and Associates, London. A big thank you to Mike Berthett, Director, Equacy Limited, UK, for joining in and showing us the lovely views outside his window. I'm sure he's waiting for this session to finish so that he can go to the blue waters waiting for him. Thank you, Mike, for joining in. Mr. Kush Kapoor, CEO, Rosyat Hotels and Resorts. And last but not the least, Mr. Carl Waz for joining in. There, Mike comes us, making us jealous and showing us the blue waters. Ladies and gentlemen, and a very, very big thank you to my colleague, Paul Walsh, who was the moderator of the day. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. Absolute pleasure to be here. And you were watching the inauguration of IIHM Global Center of Hospitality and Tourism Research and the celebration of World Tourism Day 2021. To all the people watching this live on our Facebook feed, to all the 3.6 million people, wish you a very, very happy, World Tourism Day. Be responsible. And yes, tourism for inclusivity is the theme for this year. Thank you for joining in, everybody.
Very much. Thanks, Abdullah. Thank you.